Slap hands, fist bump, and go. Hey YouTube, welcome back to LadyGi. My name is Zenab, and along with my husband, we own a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Academy here in Calgary, Canada. Today, I'm going to be talking about Ramadan fasting and training Jiu Jitsu. How are you supposed to balance the two? I get a lot of questions about that. Do I take a month off? Should I take a month off? What do you do? Does it hurt your training? How am I supposed to train and fast at the same time, etc., etc.? So if you're a school owner, or if you're Muslim and you fast in Ramadan and you train jiu-jitsu, or maybe you have a training partner that takes off for an entire month every year, share this video with them. I'm sure they're gonna find it helpful. Now, before I get into this video, please remember that you always ultimately have to do whatever works for your body. If your body is signaling that you need a break, that you need rest, and you can't train while you're fasting, then you need to listen to it. But if you're somebody who has a high tolerance for training and working out while fasting, then maybe some of these tips might help you, but ultimately the choice is yours. Do what works for you. All right, so having said that, let's get straight into it. Now, what is Ramadan? Ramadan is the holiest month for Muslims. Muslims follow a lunar calendar, and Ramadan happens to be the 9th month in that Muslim calendar. It is the holiest month of the year for Muslims. It's when we offer extra prayers, we meditate a lot, we reclaim our relationship with God, with our Creator, and we really think about the bigger picture of, why we were on this earth in the first place, and we're really trying to just do as much good as we can while distancing ourselves from worldly distractions. And one of those distractions is food and drink. So that is why we fast in the month of Ramadan. So every day we fast from dawn until dusk. We don't eat, we don't drink, we don't have intimate relationships. We really just kind of focus on prayer. Obviously, we go to work and we still go to school and all that stuff, but internally, we're just trying to be a better person than we were the year before by, like I said, offering prayers, giving charity, just trying to be a good person. One of the things that ends up happening when you're fasting, if you fasted before, is you get very, very irritable, you're low on sleep, you're depleted of a lot of calories if you're somebody who eats a lot. If you're not getting your coffee in the first thing in the morning, it's very easy to fall into that irritated mood. So the first few days of Ramadan are always going to be tough, but it doesn't mean that we don't eat. We still eat. So a typical day for a Muslim in Ramadan looks like this. We wake up very early in the morning and we have our pre-dawn meal. So we wake up before the sun rises and we eat what's called sahur or sehri. And we eat a meal basically, and we try to fill ourselves up, we eat and drink, do whatever before the sun rises. Once the sun is close to rising, we stop eating, we offer our morning prayer, and then we go on with our day. We actually pray 5 times a day. So when the 4th prayer comes around, that's when the sun sets, and that's when we're allowed to break our fast, and that's when we eat, and we can eat until the next morning if we want to, although I don't recommend it. So in a nutshell, that is what Ramadan is. We don't eat, we don't drink. Yes, not even water during those fasting hours. And if you're training jiu-jitsu, I can really understand how difficult that can be, especially in the summer months. Here in North America, in the summertime, summertime, the sun doesn't set until like 9:30 at night. So we go about 17 or 18 hours of fasting. And that's a really long time to be away from food and drink, especially if you're not used to it. If you're doing any kind of physical activity, if you're a runner, if you're a swimmer, you do a lot of weights in the gym, or if you're training jiu-jitsu, any kind of physical activity, yes, fasting is really going to affect your ability to perform, especially if you're not keeping up with your nutrition and all of that stuff. So let's talk about jiu-jitsu specifically, because that is what I do. So the first thing that I recommend is that you need to change your training schedule. So if you are somebody who trains early in the morning, maybe your academy has like a 5 a.m., a 6 a.m. class, do not go to that class. Try to train right before you break your fast. So if there is a class at the end of the day, make sure that you are attending that class. And that way, when you need to break your fast, if the class falls a little bit later, right, you can break your fast with a swig of water. That's what I do. I only train later in the evenings. I don't go to any of the daytime or the morning classes because it's just way too much, especially if you're not getting water throughout the day. Once you start sweating, right, you're gonna start feeling very lethargic and tired and dizzy. So try to change up your training schedule so that you're training at the end of the day right before you break fast. The second thing that I recommend if you're going to fast in Ramadan and train at the same time is you need to change up the way that you train. If you can't handle rolling at the end of class, then you should probably stick to drilling instead. Remember, you don't want to overdo it. So if rolling is just making you too dizzy and you're feeling like you're going to faint and pass out, then just switch to drilling instead. There's a lot of different things you can do with drills. You can work on your guard retention. You can work on passing, right? You can work on applying submissions, getting out of submissions. There's a lot of different things you can do with drilling. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't drill as often because they're so focused on rolling. So use that time and use that month to just drill. And remember to take breaks when you need to, sit out, catch your breath, throw some cold water on your face, even rinse your mouth with cold water. All of that will really help. Now, the third thing that I recommend is to really pay attention to your nutrition in Ramadan. If you come from a very ethnic background, then you know as very well as I do that in Ramadan, that's when all the traditional Ramadan type foods come out. And honestly, the month of Ramadan, we do fast, but our month is really focused and centered around food, especially at iftar time. And that's when all those traditional fried food, the sweets come out, all of that heavy cooking that we do usually ends up happening in Ramadan than any other time of the year. For example, I grew up in a Pakistani household, and Pakistanis are known for their amazing cuisine. Hands down, Pakistanis have the best food out there. Like, you can't even try to convince me otherwise. But in Ramadan, that's when all the greasy fried foods are made, the heavy rice dishes, the heavy curries, right? And so if you're eating a lot of that and you're trying to train the next day, you're probably gonna have a really hard time. So really try to pay attention to what's going in your body, especially if you want to train later on. So you really have to make sure that you're striking a balance between your Ramadan type foods and your training. I'm not saying go cold turkey and avoid all of those good foods. Enjoy the month, enjoy breaking your fast by all means, do what you need to do, but just really pay attention to how frequently you're eating foods like that. So I'll tell you what I do. Typically in Ramadan, I'll only have fried foods on the weekend because I do really enjoy that type of food. But my lifestyle is very carnivore, so I try to make sure that I'm sticking to that as much as I possibly can. I am very accustomed to fasting because I do intermittent fasting throughout the year. And I'll do extended fasts. Sometimes I'll go and do a dry fast, just really depending on what I'd like to do. But I typically will eat one meal a day. So for me, it's not a problem. I'm very accustomed to fasting and not being without food and water for long periods of time. But if you're not accustomed to it, you really need to make sure that you're paying attention to what you're eating and how much of it you're eating. So what I recommend is pay attention to what type of protein, fats, and carbs that you're putting into your body. You might want to start eating foods that keep you full for a longer period of time. And one thing that I have avoided for the last couple of years is eating certain types of carbs. Not all carbs, because not all carbs were created the same, but some carbs really have a bad effect on my body. What carbs end up doing is that it spikes your glucose levels, and the next day you're going to feel extremely hungry, like you've never seen food before. So I try to avoid carbs at night because I don't want to feel hungry the next day. Obviously, if I'm having like a family dinner or a gathering, or if there's like a celebration or a wedding or something, I will go all out and I will eat everything that's in my face. But typically for my day-to-day, I don't eat a lot of those types of carbs because the next day I feel extremely hungry and I'm just miserable for the rest of the day. So I typically like to stick to protein. I do a carnivore only diet for the most part, and I only eat meat. And I'll leave my carbs for like things that I kind of want to munch on or snack on, like fruit or vegetables, because those are carbs. And then the fried food I'll leave for the weekend in Ramadan. The last tip I have for you is you really want to pay attention to what you are eating and drinking at sahur time. You have to make sure that you're drinking a lot of water at sahur and at iftar time, because you need to get through the rest of the day. Especially if you're going to train at the end of the night, you're going to be sweating a lot. And if you still have like an hour or two you from when your class ends to when iftar time is, you really need to make sure that you've drank enough water in the morning. So try to also incorporate foods that have a lot of water in it. So if it's summertime, eat a lot of watermelon, eat a lot of cucumbers, things like that. Things that have water and are also carbs at the same time, so it'll benefit you. But try to drink as much water as you possibly can at sahur time, because you're really gonna need it. Our bodies are not meant to be away from water for that long, but they can be away from food. So just really keep that in mind if you're going to train and fast at the same time. And you also want to make sure that whatever you're eating doesn't affect your stomach, right? There's certain foods that I just cannot eat because it really affects my stomach. I love curries, I love salin, I love foods like that, but it really has a negative effect on my stomach, and then I can't sleep. So if your sleep is getting affected, then there's something off in your diet. And of course, in Ramadan, everyone's low on sleep because we're praying all night, where we're getting up early, we're not eating during the day. It can get very, very exhausting. So just make sure that you're pacing yourself. Go to class, drill instead of rolling, get your water in, pay attention to what you're eating, what you're consuming, and try to get a good night's rest at the same time. And if you're unsure, just always listen to your body. Go with your gut. Do what works for you. If it's not working for you and you need to take the month off, take the month off. But just try to still immerse yourself into jiu-jitsu. Try to just go to class and watch class. You'll still get something out of it if you're not actually on the mats. So try not to completely remove yourself from jiu-jitsu. Try to maybe get a grappling dummy or practice, just shrimping at home. There's still things that you can do without getting your heart rate up. So I highly recommend that you do not take the entire month off. Obviously, if you need to, you need to, but I really recommend that you don't. Still try to make it to class, still try to drill, still try to sit and watch class. You can even put your gi on and just sit on the mat, so you're still absorbing some kind of information. And this all just comes down to how important jiu-jitsu is to you, right? You can still do all the things. You just have to prioritize, and you just need to be really smart about how you're doing it without overexerting yourself. So I hope this video was helpful. Please give it a like and share it to somebody who does train jiu-jitsu in your life. If you have a Muslim training partner, I'm pretty sure they're gonna find this video helpful. And if you have additional recommendations on what to eat or what you do, please leave them in the comments below. I love reading everybody's comments on what works for them. And you can also find me on Instagram as well. So thank you so much for watching, and you guys will catch me in my next video. Bye.